visiting Japan 1,000, 2,000 years ago, argues the Chazon Ish, knew very well, based on a tradition, that they have crossed the international date line. Meaning, what I'm walking away with is, with Hawaii, you could rely on the Chazon Ish with confidence, because you have the Yavitz, you have the Chazon Ish, and you have what I could say is logical due to history. And therefore, someone like Ramosha Feinstein said that you can rely on Hawaii on the Chazon Ish, or Rav Hersher Schechter said so. So worry not, those of you who are planning a trip to Hawaii. When it comes to Japan and New Zealand, the communities there, by the way, the ones that are there nowadays, don't keep, from what I hear, they don't keep Shabbos on Sunday, not in Japan, not in Auckland and in Wellington, they don't keep it. So they have their minig. You probably would come to a community and follow their minig, but if you're a true Chazon Ishnik, you would have a little bit of a problem. One thing to keep in mind, you go to Hawaii for Shabbos, you better use 5 ounces of grape juice for your Kiddush cup. Why? Why is that? Because Chazon Ish was of the opinion that you have to have a large cup. So if you're in Hawaii and you're relying on him that today is Shabbos, you might as well honor him and have a nice amount of what? Of grape juice. Fine. I was asked a question. I could arrange, this is the question, I could arrange with a zoo that I purchase a ticket before Shabbos. I don't have to carry it, they'll know me. And I want to go visit a zoo on Shabbos. I'm going to be in some exotic place. Not far from the hotel there is a zoo. I want to pre-arrange a visit to the zoo. Is it permissible? You're not going to do anything. You're going to walk in, they're going to identify you, you walk in, what would be the... People see that what, and they think that you pay. Okay, so that's an interesting question, because you assume that it's an area that no one's there. Let's assume Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach gives a green light. And Shmira Shabbos Kilchasa gives a green light. One would argue that perhaps it's not the spirit of Shabbos. It's not. One would argue. So I found something very interesting. The Trumas Hadeshen. Again, we're talking about a great rabbinic authority, quoted dozens of times by the Ramah. So one of his disciples recorded all the practices of his master of the Trumas Hadeshen, Rabbi Yisrael Visserlin, and he compiled it. He called it Leket Yosher. Very fascinating. And in it he notes that his Rebbe, Rabbi Yisrael, the Trumas Hadeshen, early 15th century, Lo Ra'a Ari. He never saw a lion. Never in his life he saw a lion, which could be a good thing, right? Never saw a lion. So he would read Tanakh, and he'd read about David HaMelech, and he'd read Yehuda. He never saw a lion. One Shabbos he gets the news that at the other end of town, they actually are displaying a zug, 2 lions, not 1. So halach b'Shabbat, he said, this is important to see. So he went on Shabbos, and he went to look at the lions. Now, it didn't say they charged admission there. But nevertheless, what's interesting, what seems to be is that to see the Pilei Habora, to be inspired by these creatures, was something that he valued, and he felt that it's appropriate to do it on Shabbos. So that's an interesting psak that is given. These are a few of the areas that relate to Hilchos Shabbos. Just in passing, David Wolf, who we originally discussed this class, he asked me about visiting churches, mosques, and Buddhist temples. That was his question that David asked. We don't walk into churches. If in the United States, could be here too, it's quite relevant, election day, they often had voting polls in the basement. So their halacha tells us that if you have a need to go into a chotzer of a church, it is permissible, not in the sanctuary itself, but if there is a need for some kind of meeting, for some kind of a social gathering, you do it, but not in the sanctuary. That is something we avoid. Even though times have changed in Protestant, and we could go out and discuss if there are no symbols, but that's the plain halacha. A mosque, according to almost all Rishonim, would be halachically permissible. You got to pray that you get out alive. That's that. Buddhist temples, originally Buddha was not Avodah Zarah. There was a lot of wisdom in Buddhism. There's an excellent book called What the Buddha Taught. And there's true chokhmah bagoyim there. There's a tremendous amount of wisdom. The original Buddha. But, like in many religions, things are corrupted. The Buddha was corrupted from a pure philosophy to something that was worshipped. Some claim that it was done in the days of Alexander the Great. Nevertheless, by now it is worshipped. And therefore you do not walk into a Buddhist temple. I'll take perhaps a few questions, and then in 4 minutes we'll move to Marav. Yes?
You dealt with flying west from Los Angeles and crossing the Dateline Erev Shabbos. What about coming east? If you're in Shanghai, can you get on a plane at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Erev Shabbos, to land in Los Angeles at 10 o'clock in the morning, Erev Shabbos, and spend Shabbos in Los Angeles?
Okay. Very, very good question. And what you would have to assess is, number one, where's your international dateline? Where's your halachic international dateline? So I personally would be following the Chazon Ish through and through, right? Which is great for my Hawaii visit Bekarov, right? B'yameinu. It would be great. It would create some serious problems if I land up a Shabbos in Japan or New Zealand. But that's my personal approach. So if I follow the Chazon Ish, so it is leaving on a Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. So the result is that the minute the plane goes over the coast, I have just entered, again, give me the time and date again that you are leaving.
Friday afternoon, 3 p.m.
Okay. So
make it Sydney, Australia, because China's a little bit different.
Okay, give me Sydney.
Sydney, Australia.
What time am I leaving?
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And you get to Los Angeles, let's say noon, Friday afternoon.
So I have no problem at all.
Okay.
Because I crossed the international dateline backwards, so I basically have no issue at all in that case. No issue at all. The case where there could be a question is if I leave Motzei Shabbos from Australia. If I leave Motzei Shabbos from Australia,
because you land on Shabbos.
but no, and let's say I leave Motzei Shabbos late enough, or even let's say Sunday morning from Australia. I leave Sunday morning from Australia. The moment I get off the coast of Australia, according to the Chazon Ish, I have just entered into Shabbos. That could be a little bit of an issue, and that the halachic would most probably be that until sunset Sunday, meaning you get on Sunday morning, right? Sunday morning 8 a.m. flight. Until sunset, you should not do any malachos if you follow the Chazon Ish. If you take Rav Tukachinsky's approach, you have yourself some time, a couple hours, until you have to start worrying about it.
What about Eretz Yisrael, and you're there for a second in Yontiv, and you're in a matzav where you could actually buy a ticket to go into a museum or take a bus, and you have no problems with Maris Ayin?
There is no problem of Maris Ayin, and you would have to analyze it case by case. In other words, Maris Ayin and going to my zoo would not be a problem if I have someone else who...
You got the ticket already.
I got the ticket already.
Right.
Does it have an actual value? In other words, we have to assess, believe it or not, if a ticket is just a sign that I paid or something that actually has a value. If it actually is something that is a commodity that has a value, it would be muksa. If it is something that's just a sign that I personally paid, so then I could go ahead and go to the zoo, no problem with it, or the Israel Museum. Taking transportation already is a little bit of a separate issue, and due to the fact that there would be a Maris Ayin, in B'makom Tzorech, you could probably take the light rail in Yerushalayim. B'makom Tzorech, if there wouldn't be a Maris Ayin case. But that's a very good question.
Well, I'm talking about Shabbos, not like Shabbos, but let's say Tisha B'Av or Purim, traveling between Israel and here.
So there's a smart way to travel, and then there is a way that I don't recommend it. Travel to Israel. Travel to Israel. Rosh Hashanah, we have, many of us have the practice of not traveling on the 9 days. No, it's a time. Rosh Hashanah Auerbach says that if it's a dvar mitzvah, it is permissible. In other words, this omen, this concern that it's not a good time, it does not apply. And he gives us an example of a dvar mitzvah like traveling to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so I know people that fly to Israel, and when they have a situation where they could arrange a flight on Shivas or B'Tammuz, they would go ahead and do it. Why? You cut your day short. There's no question how Moshe makes it clear that even though you are cutting, in some cases, a good 7 hours out of your fast, absolutely no problem. Please do not take a flight the other way, because to add 7 hours to a fast day is just not a smart thing to do. Go ahead.
When you go to Europe, or let's say in Istanbul, you want to go Shabbos to synagogue. There's many synagogues now have security.
Ooh.
And some synagogues, they tell you you have to register and bring your passport.
and there's
When they
no
tell you, and how do you deal with this?
there's no Erev in Istanbul, from what I understand.
Or Cologne, or, most
Wow,
European
wow.
have no security.
Costa Rica.
They often have an Israeli fellow beside the.
No, but you have to go through a security, like at the airport. They have
Wow.
a machine now.
Okay, it's permissible to go through the security, just don't have medals in your pocket, and if you have it by mistake, you have no
No, you
kavanah.
have to take out.
You take out everything. Okay, that would be fine. Carrying the passport would be a little bit more complex. Would be a little bit more complex. But that's an interesting. Wow. What is
They won't let you in without.
No.
Jack? Go ahead and we'll move.
I had a relative who left Japan once a Shabbos,
Yeah.
arrived in the West Coast, and it was still Shabbos. What do you do?
Ooh. Okay. So the bottom line is what you do is that this could be the same question would be if someone lands on Shabbos. You put everything before Shabbos in your suitcase, right? You do not move it in a normal way. In other words, you get off the plane and you will look very funny because you're basically moving the suitcase with your foot. You are allowed to get off the plane because anyway, if you don't get off, security will take you off. When you are in the airport, you move your muksa in an abnormal way. You sit down, and if we're dealing only with a couple of short hours, you sit down and meditate for the next 4 hours. In a situation where there is, if it's a health issue, and makom sakana, which it could be, I'm not saying with you, but with people that are traveling with elderly parents, and it's a situation that the airport could be dangerous for them. They don't get their food, their medicine, so of course you get a non-Jew, and only malchus rabbanan. For healthy people, sitting in an airport in Shabbos is something that has been done, and unfortunately we have to be careful to avoid such things. Yes.
Can I just clarify something you said before about the hotel keys? And that you said that because it's two Malach Rabbanan that you're actually allowed to ask. So it's not something you have to arrange before Shabbos. You can actually on Shabbos ask the person to open the door for you.
Correct. If, again, ideal, if you could arrange it and then they only understand the hint, that's better. But in some situations, it's not the same person. From living in South America, they never got the hints. So there are cases where you have to just do it straight out. It's a shvus, the shvus, makam tzorach, and it is indeed permissible. We'll take one. Let me give me one question. Go ahead.
So a lot of the new hotel rooms are equipped with energy efficient devices, which means motion detectors that will turn on the air conditioner, the heating, or the lighting only if you're in the room and only if you're moving around in the room and so on. What does one do under these circumstances?
Okay, not simple. If we are not dealing with lights, you could be far more lenient because you have no kavana, and on a drabonon, you have no kavana in a miskaven. It is similar to opening the refrigerator when there's no bulb that so many of us do. It wouldn't be an issue. If we would be dealing with actual lights and it is impossible to use the room otherwise, I would recommend using not such a fancy hotel. And in case of need, it's not as simple. Not as simple. If lights actually go on, and you know that my next move will turn on a light, if you know for a fact that step, that could be problematic. If I don't know where it is and I have no kavanah, I could be lenient. Otherwise, a problem indeed. Well, let me just end with Josh. Josh.
No, there used to be a custom many, many years ago in Toronto where on Friday a person would go to the corner store, pay them, for a newspaper, for a Jewish newspaper, they would pick up on Shabbos. So the Jewish newspaper would be delivered, dozens of them would be delivered to the stores at some point. And after shul, people would go in, having paid already on Friday for the newspaper, pick them up and take them home.
The newspapers were actually transported on Shabbos for the Jewish community to these stores. Are you sure it was a Jewish newspaper?
It probably was a Jewish newspaper. I'm guessing it was. No, I'm guessing it was.
Interesting. If it would not be a Jewish newspaper, there is a lot, it wouldn't really be an issue because it's not transported for the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Jewish newspaper would be interesting. There are probably a few more details
Maybe.
there.
So the part B of the question is, can you go into, let's say, Starbucks on Erev Shabbos and pay for coffee that you're going to come in on Shabbos to drink?
Okay. I would love to say yes. The Ramah tells us, the Ramah says that if you are Mishalem, they are doing it for you. That's what the Ramah says. That payment relates it back to you. So therefore, unfortunately, that won't work. That's the reality.
Rabbi, what do you do with the electric faucet in Shabbos?
Electric.
One
Okay.
more question,
The electric faucet itself, again, we're dealing with the drabonon, and if you put it on with the shino, it's complex. I'm try to avoid it to the best of your ability. In a situation that you mamish can't, you do mokum shinoi. When it comes to a washroom, there's no issue at all with electric. When it comes to a toilet you don't have to worry about. There's something called kover abrius, and therefore for kover abrius, the Chazal allowed you to transport muksa, and therefore by your movement that flushes the toilet is not a problem. The water itself could be a little bit different.
Just one quick question. Like again in Europe, you travel and
Yeah.
for kosher meals.
Yes.
They want you to prepay Friday
Right.
for your kosher meal. Also.
If it's a restaurant that's kosher, it's 100%
Yeah, kosher
fine. That was the
restaurant.
norm in
Yeah.
in New York. In New York, 3 decades ago, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, after his wife passed away, that's what he would eat in a restaurant on Shabbos. So that was the norm, and it's done in Israel. There is absolutely no problem with that. Thank you, everybody, and thank you.
I want to thank Rabbi Malevsky, and again thank our sponsors, Susan and Deb, for sponsoring this program. Next week will be the final in the series Shabbos on the Road. Will be sponsored by, Rabbinic View of the Coffee House. It will be sponsored by Elaine Tenezef and Mayor Zeifman. We're going to daven Marav in the far room in 5 minutes. It's now 8.